Well, as you can see, I've got a lot of photos to edit, so I'm going to dive in. And basically, I thought it'd be a nice way of spending the end of the year in having a good, at least a couple of hours, hanging out in Lightroom, showing you how I do some of the edits. I've chosen a whole selection of photos from the past, to be honest, couple of years. And I want to show you how I go from something like this image, a fairly pedestrian, plain looking scene, and turn it into something a little bit more exciting. I'm going to be showing you all of those photos, including shots like this and including shots like this, all different genres, bit of landscape, bit of street, bit of something else, something with my cat apparently. So yeah, hopefully this is going to be an interesting video in looking at how I would do some Lightroom edits. Hopefully taking you through my whole workflow. So yeah, strap in. It's going to be a long one. Maybe make yourself a cup of coffee, cup of tea. I've got some water, and I've got a Woodland Walk candle on the go. And let's make a start. So let's actually just start off with a nice easy landscape scene. I think this one is quite nice. This is a shot that I took down on the holy island of Lindisfarne. That is the castle. I think it's a pretty nice shot. This is our before. This is pre any kind of editing. And as you can see, if we just flick back and forth, it's pretty minimal in terms of what I've actually done to this shot. It's because I just don't think it's a photo that needs a lot of work. I took this at sunset. We've already got these lovely colors. If we have a look at the camera that I used here, my R5 with my 24-105mm lens, and it's at f4, and that's what's allowed us to get the nice bokeh of the reeds. I found a gap in them to act as a frame, so we're looking through at the castle. So a few things that I want to do straight away here is straighten up our image, because if we have a little look at the horizon, I think it's slightly off kilter. So just a tiny little twist, something like this. And I also want to bring down this top corner a little bit, and then just from the side, just trying to bring everything a little bit more in line so that the castle is actually in the middle of the frame. I think that looks good. So what I want to do is not really adjust the colors too much, because I do like that we've got this sort of sunset vibe going on. I'm going to bring the highlights down just a touch, maybe even drop the shadows. Now, it's already a little shadowy, but sometimes I feel that when you pull the shadows up, you start to lose some of that mood, lose some of the drama that you get from it being a nice sunset scene. I don't want it to look HDR-y. I don't want all those shadows to be visible. I actually like the fact that we've got that mood. So I'm going to bring them down actually quite a bit, almost minus 50. Maybe pop the whites a little bit, because if we just pulse that slider, look at what that's doing to the sky, to the side of the castle. I really like that. So I'm going to go plus 20 with those whites, before and after, before and after. It's looking good. I'm going to get the curves tool down here, add in a couple of control points, and just drag up the bottom. And that is basically going to give us this sort of filmic fade. So while we have brought the shadows down, this is just going to stop them clipping completely to black. It's instead giving it a much sort of softer contrast. If I just turn that off and on, you can see what it's doing. Just sort of giving everything that slight matte look, that filmic look, which I do like a lot, to be quite honest. Our white balance currently is just as shot. Almost certainly it was on cloudy. No, it wasn't. Was it on shade? No, it wasn't that either. It could have just been on auto. You know what? It was probably on auto white balance, because I was shooting in RAW, so we can do what we want to it later on. What does it do if we go to cloudy or daylight? Don't really like what it does using either of those. So I'm actually just going to keep it as shot, but I am just going to manually increase that temperature and also slightly increase the tint. I do like increasing the magentas in a sunset, because that's what kind of gives you that nice rich sort of purpley tone that you can get in the sky on a sunset. Something around there. Let's have a look at our color mixers. This is often where I do much of my work when it comes to color editing. It really allows you to change the hue, the saturation, luminance of the colors, and as a result, you can craft a look which is, I would say, uniquely yours. So we're grabbing those yellows, and you can see if I push them to the right, it's taking the yellows into the greens, and I don't want that. It's doing odd things with the grasses, odd things on the bricks. If we go too far the other way, it starts to go a bit too orangey, almost a little bit pink. So I'm just going to go somewhere like -20. It's adding that warmth, but it's not going overboard. Also going to slightly increase the luminance. What about the orange? What if we sort of up that luminance a little bit here as well? Yeah, again, that works. It quickly gets out of control, though. It looks very odd on the castle in particular. So I'm just going to go +10. I might drop that hue by a couple of points. Not by much, because if you do that with the orange, things go pink. Very pink. Don't want that. If you go the other way, very green. So with the orange slider, it's always worth being very, very subtle. So I'm going to drop that a little and also slightly pull down the saturation of the oranges before and after, sort of adding that richness into the scene. I'm actually just going to slightly just pull back on what I've just done with the oranges. Something like this. I'm not trying to replicate the edit that I've already done on here, which is this. I think, yes, this is this. That's what I did first time around when I showed these photos in a different video. What I'm doing is instead kind of going either a new direction or simply just seeing how it goes, seeing where I get to. Sometimes I'll do an edit that's just to taste at the time, but it's not necessarily, I'm not really editing with a particular goal in mind, and that's certainly the case here. I'm just really enjoying kind of diving into some of these photos in Lightroom. I don't know about you, but I love the editing side of photography. Quite a few people will dive into the comments on my channel and will say that it's their least favorite part. They always want to be out there with the camera, and obviously I like being out with the camera as well, but for me, taking a photo is often only around sort of 70% of the edit, of the process. The edit then is where I kind of take things that little step further. And yeah, I do love playing around with Lightroom, particularly if I've got a candle on, I've got a drink, and I've got the time to just sort of dive into it and enjoy it. So that's what I'm doing today. The blues in the sky, I actually don't think we've got a lot in the blue channel, and indeed you can see it's pretty much just this little bit of cloud at the top of the image. I think the rest of it is probably going to be in the cyans, maybe even in the magentas now. So if we grab that, you know what? Almost nothing at all there. What about the magentas? All right, so where's all that blue coming from? If you don't know, you click this target adjustment, you bring it over, and there we start playing around. And that suggests it's green, but you know what? I don't really think it's green either. So, okay, that's fine. We're just not really going to do a lot with the sky, and that's fine. There's not a lot of color there. And I suspect if I grabbed this blue and brought this down, we'd have to bring that down, we'd have to bring this down, we'd have to bring the purples down, and actually, you know, even then, I'm still seeing not a lot of change in the sky. So, I don't know, I'm seeing blue, but maybe that's just me. Who knows? So that's where we kind of are. What I might do is have a little look at the color grading, and I do love playing around with the color grading tool. It's a great way of trying to create a slight filmic look. If you're trying to replicate a film stock like Kodak Gold or something like that, you can get some really interesting looks. You can also go really too far, I think, with color grading. So I like to sort of play around with the sliders and see where I get to. And in this case, I think what I want to do is add some yellow, maybe even some green into the shadows. That is going to immediately give it that sort of almost vintagey film vibe. So if I just bring up, I'll go a long way with the saturation and sort of bring up so you can see exactly what it's doing. And I sort of move the hue slider around into the sort of yellowy greens. You can see that we've got this sort of warmer color cast going on, and then we can start playing around with the saturation. It takes it from being magenta-y shadows to having this extra warmth there. I'm actually going to do the same in the midtones as well. Bring that hue over into the yellows, and then just start increasing that saturation, and then play around with those yellows. And actually, as we push it more into yellowy green, is when it starts to give, I think, even more of a sort of filmic look. And I'll be honest, when I'm saying things like filmic, it's very much not, it's just my opinion. It's more a vibe rather than I'm trying to replicate a particular film stock. I'm not trying to replicate Kodak Gold or Portrait 400 or any of those. It's just when you look at it, you get that slightly filmic, vintagey feel. So, I'm not trying to piss anybody off by suggesting that what I'm doing here is creating Kodak Gold. What I am doing is just trying to create a bit of a vibe. And I think that actually is what I've done, and I do quite like this. I'm not going to add anything to the highlights in this because I actually don't think it's necessary. We've got nice highlight tones already. Actually, you know what? Adding just the tiniest kiss of warmth into the highlights as well. Yeah, that does look good. So if we turn off the color grading tool, off and on, look at that extra gold that it's adding in, that nice warmth, like the evening light is just coming in and hitting these grasses, hitting the castle, and because it is doing that. So it's not like we're creating that from nothing. We're just sort of emphasizing what's already there and trying to take control of the colors in the scene. I think that's honestly pretty nice. I do prefer that to the original edit I did, which is this, which when I look at it, I actually, if anything, I prefer the unedited raw file over the edit I originally did. It's whatever I've done to it, sapped quite a lot of orange from the scene. Yeah, I've sort of reduced the saturation on the orange and the yellows, and I think I've cooled the scene down rather than warm it up. Whereas what we've done today definitely lent much more into those warm tones, which I definitely prefer. I have got another shot from that same day, which is this one here. So rather than start from scratch, what I'm actually going to do is just take a little bit of a cheats route. I'm going to press Command or Copy C. I'm going to select the settings that I want to copy from this photo. I'm just going to go all, except remove the crop, and go across to this shot and simply paste them in place. And you know what? I don't love it, if I'm honest. We've got a very different starting point, I think, with these two photos. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to want to adjust. One is the white balance, because it was a cooler photo taken slightly earlier in the day. So we've done that. I also want to bring those highlights back up a touch. We still need to adjust the crop because you can see that our horizon isn't straight. So pull that around to about there. And we've got some very crunchy clouds and crunchy blue sky going on over here. That's probably because of the amount I messed about with these earlier on. Maybe it isn't. If we turn off our color mixer, actually, you know what? That's kind of fine. Maybe it's just because of the blue. Who knows? I could bring up that luminance. It's looking a little crushed. There's a bit too much dark blue going on. So I might actually bring down that saturation. Maybe also bring down the hue so it's slightly more of a tealy blue rather than that rich royal blue. What do we think? Yeah, I think it's okay. I will say at this point that when I'm editing, doing this sort of thing, I've got a massive LED light right above my face. And basically, as I'm looking at my monitor, I'm also seeing this huge softbox. So it is actually slightly difficult for me to accurately judge when I'm recording all of the nuances in the photo. When I'm actually doing the edits for real, if I'm doing it for a proper job, I don't have this on. Obviously, I tend to edit in a mostly dark room, but for the purposes of this video, I need the light. Otherwise, you won't be able to see me. Okay, this is going okay. One thing I definitely want to do is bring down this highlight here. It's very bright, it's very distracting, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to rescue it, because it is there in the raw file, straight out of camera. This highlight is overwhelmingly bright. The light is coming in and hitting here. It's a lot brighter than the highlight we've got on the castle, but the castle is our subject. That is where you want the eye to be drawn, but the eye will always be more naturally drawn to the brightest part of a scene, so I don't want that brightest part to be the boat. So I'm going to try and resolve that by bringing up a brush in our brush tool, and I'm simply going to brush that over the boat. I've got auto mask turned on, which I don't want. I want to be able to paint over all of it, just like this. And then a little bit on whatever this bit is as well. And first of all, let's just bring down the highlights, because I suspect it's going to look a little bit weird, because I think this is blown out is the problem. Yeah, it's going to look odd. So I'm going to have to try and balance this a little bit by reducing the contrast, by bringing up the blacks, then bringing down the exposure. Because if I didn't, we're going to have some parts of it falling all the way to black. It's going to look overly contrasty, overly weird. So I'm going to reduce the contrast, then bring the exposure down even more. Thankfully, I can see that there is detail in this boat here. It hasn't just fallen to grey. It's actually fallen to a nice light yellowy, orangey colour like the rest of it. So I think we've got away with that. I think that's okay. And you can see the difference if we just turn that tool off and on. It has made an immense difference, and it now looks like that is just a nice foreground object, but our eye is drawn to the castle in the background, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to bring in another brush tool, and I'm going to turn auto mask back on, and this time it's going on the castle itself. And with auto mask on, I should be able to sort of roughly paint over it, and it isn't going to paint on the clouds. It is just going to let us paint on the castle and the slope. And I'm just going to give it a little kick of the whites. Actually going to slightly bring down the highlights and then bring up the overall exposure so that it doesn't start to go a bit too bright. What about just a little bit of dehaze? +2. What about a ton of clarity? No, let's not do that. But just a few little points of it. I don't think that's done anything at all. But it has just slightly given that side of the hill a little extra bit of lightness, which is what we wanted, because now the castle is brighter than the boat. So your eye is drawn to the castle in the scene rather than the distracting foreground elements. So I quite like this. It's not necessarily my favourite edit of this scene. Here's what I had before. I don't really like this one either. It's lent magenta. It's lent very much into cool tones. This would have been taken at, let's have a look, 20 to 2 in the afternoon, but in December. So, yeah, you know, it's not quite sunset, but the sun would have set at about 3 o'clock. So at 20 to 2, we're certainly getting on towards that evening light. You can see we've definitely got the light hitting the castle from this side and falling to shadow. So it's very much low in the sky, casting those long evening lights. And so that's why I want to lean into these evening tones. So I am going to check my phone to see who's calling me. And the answer is no one, actually. But I do like the tones that we've got here. We've got warmer tones now. I don't think that's quite as straight as I wanted it to be. I think something like that. It's throwing me off slightly because this is a bit of a hill over here. I don't think so. I don't think it's necessarily that this line all the way along is actually the horizon. So I'm kind of also taking my cues from the uprights on the castle. So I think this looks good. Yeah, but I quite like this scene overall. I like that it's not just a photo of the castle in both images, in this one and in this one. It's about finding a way of framing it using some of those foreground items, and that kind of adds to the story, I think, of the castle. Here we're seeing it in those reeds. That tells you that this is in a natural location, and it's got reeds, it's got things around that nearby, and here we're seeing it with these other items, with the boat, with this big sort of winch hook thing, whatever it is. Again, that's helping tell the story that there is a fishing industry, let's say, around where this castle is positioned. Yeah. The only other things I might do is, if I was feeling so inclined, I would probably remove some distracting elements. These buoys in the water, because they're catching the sunlight so brightly, I do find them quite distracting, but not as distracting as this bench here, which for whatever reason is caught the sun and it's just become a big glowing orb. Now, I have a mixed relationship with the idea of photoshopping an element out of a scene. I will happily do it if that item is temporary. You know, if there's let's say there was a traffic cone or a temporary sign that had been put here, and if you visited that a week later or a month later or a year later, that sign will no longer be there. Things like a bench or this National Trust sign here, that will always be there, so I don't love the idea of taking them out. A person, again, I might remove a person because, well, they're walking here now, but in a few seconds' time, they will no longer be here. So that's generally how I like to think about some of my photoshopping. But I also don't think that this bench necessarily doesn't add to the story, but also removing it doesn't detract from the story. So honestly, I don't really mind in just taking that out. I'm actually just going to take the whole thing there, and I'm probably also going to do the same on this sign. It's a rough job. I would do it much more neatly if I actually was doing this for a proper thing, and then without them, we've got fewer distractions over there. The boys, I don't mind so much because well, firstly, they're only these little kind of dots, but also they do add to the scene. They add to that story of fishing and people kind of working the waters, whereas that bench didn't really add anything. And because it was so blown out as a highlight, you couldn't even really tell that what it was anyway. So, yeah, I do think that this scene is better off without them. Anyway, I think I've spent a bit too much time on this shot, so I'm going to move on to something quicker, I think. It's a nighttime scene. This is one I took, when did I take this actually? 1st of December, 2023. Oh, so the few days before I took the other one. Yes, at night. It was absolutely freezing. It was about -7, I think, when I went up to Queensferry, and I stood there without gloves, taking these photos for quite a long exposure, f10, 13 seconds. I took quite a few in the end that night. This is the edit that I originally did. It's kind of lent into the tones of the night, because we've got that f13. No, we haven't. We've got f10 aperture. We've got the nice sort of starburst effects coming from those points of light. We've also got great depth of field. Everything's in focus. It's not about it's not about a shallow depth of field. It's about having everything really looking nice and crisp. We've got these points of light that are at first a little distracting, and these are actually stars, and that's why they've got the motion, because in over 13-second exposure, stars will move around in the scene. What have I done? Ruined everything. Honestly, I kind of want to take those out. So I'm actually let's have a little look. First of all, in the geometry within the crop tool, I'm going to go auto, and give it a little twist, and that is yeah, better than it was, because obviously I'm taking it from a bridge, but I'm taking it from below. You're therefore looking up at it, and everything kind of leans inwards because of the perspective, so that's just correcting a little bit for that. This is a photo that I don't really think needs a lot doing. I'm going to reduce the temperature a little bit, and I'm going to bring the tint, I think, slightly... You know what? I don't want it to be green. I also don't want it to be magenta. I actually don't really want it to be either of those things. So maybe let's do more of our color work in the color mixer. Let's go into the purples. I don't think... Oh, yeah, there are some purples down there. You can see in this sort of strip here in particular, if I pulse that up and down, or if I pulse luminance up and down, yeah, you can kind of see where those purples are. And I don't want the sky to be purple. I want it to be a nice rich blue. So I'm going to bring that down here. And then the rest of it should be pretty much blue. And let's take that slightly into the hue, the cyan part of the hue. What about the deep night sky? Where's that coming from? It's telling me this as well. So what I'm going to do... Oh, we don't want to go that far, do we? Something about that. Is that okay? And I think we can up our saturation. Again, with this light on, I am struggling to see what I'm doing, because down here, what I don't want is to get a sort of odd color cast. So I'd like to avoid that if possible. So I'm going to bring this down to adjust, to accommodate that. I think that's okay. Might need to bring that back up a little bit, because I think that's slightly too cyany, but I think that now has a nice balance. Okay, what about these yellows? Let's bring those down, because I don't want those to be greeny yellow, with the because there was some at the time. Because of the sort of the under lighting here, it's that sort of bulb where it's a bit sort of sickly in tone. I like the idea of this being a bit more orangey stonework against the night sky. So I'm bringing that hue down slightly. Also going to bring the saturation down, not all the way, but the dominant color here is the blue. So these oranges I'm happy to let be less saturated in place of the nice blue sky. We're just... Oh, no, wait, that was a yellow. The oranges. Oh, yeah, that's where the other oranges are. Okay, let's bring it down a little bit. Bring that hue down a little bit too. And maybe just slightly increase the luminance. Okay, I think that's looking good. Is my crop right? Is that okay? No, I think what I want is, yeah, this one as our main upright. And I think that is already looking a bit better. In terms of our exposure, it's pretty much where I would want it to be, I think. I mean, I'll play around with some sliders. I don't want to increase the shadows, because there's a lot of shadow detail down at the ground that I basically don't want in the night sky, and I want it to still look like it's the dead of night. I'm not trying to make this look like it's early evening, so I'm happy to kind of leave the shadows roughly where they are. A little pop of whites might not go amiss, but very quickly you'll start to get odd-looking kind of contrasty things going on. Particularly these street lights will start turning into odd orbs. No, I don't like it. I hate it. Okay, so let's just bring that down. Just +5. We could probably bring down the highlights to compensate, and then maybe bring up the whites. So it's a little bit more like that. A little bit more on the exposure. So yeah, we are sort of upping it just a touch, but otherwise I think that's kind of where I want to keep it. For a nighttime scene, particularly with lights like this, a bit of pop of clarity can work really well. And if I just pulse that, I do love what it's doing basically to everywhere. I love what it's doing to the details on the underside of the bridge. I love what it's doing to the orbs of light, but I don't like what it's doing down here so much in this part of the scene. So what I actually think I'm going to do is just up it a little bit, just +4. I'm going to get a brush, fairly large brush, something like this, and I'm going to increase the feather. I'm going to decrease the flow so that I have to brush many times in order to apply the full effect. I'm going to up that clarity a lot. And now what I'm going to do is just paint it over the top of the areas where I want it. Almost like I'm dodging and burning, but instead I'm just painting in some of that clarity, because I do love how it looks. I love how it looks in this building, but I can just sort of paint in little bits, kind of like this. There is a chance that this might be affecting the exposure of the sky around, so it might be really obvious where I'm doing this. To my eye, certainly with this LED overhead, I cannot see any sort of issues, so to speak, with that. I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm happy with how that works. But because we've just, that's where we've applied the effect so far. So if we're doing that off and on, we're getting that exactly the sort of pop of clarity, that definition, that extra contrast that's coming from using the tool, but it's only where we want it to be. It hasn't done anything down here, hasn't done anything where it's going to cause a problem for us. But I am going to bring in another tool, a linear gradient this time. I'm going to bring this in basically like this, and because I am noticing that we've got a lot of highlights for these boats where the floodlights are. And again, they're kind of distracting me because this is almost a brighter highlight than we have on top of the bridge. And I don't want that to be one of the most visible parts of the scene. So I'm bringing that highlight down quite a bit, specifically to try and reduce what's visible down there. But it still needs to look realistic. If I go all the way down, it looks artificially dimmed. It doesn't look like the lights are off. It looks like I've messed around with it. So yeah, I'm actually going to push it to minus 38, something like that. You know, still a heavy amount of reduction, but I think it looks natural. It looks like that's how it's supposed to be. And I think that does more easily allow our eyes to fall on the bridge and on the lights where we want it to. What if I actually just bring in that bottom corner too? So I think that's a pretty cool looking shot, to be quite honest. Overall, I am going to increase the vibrance, because I do want this to be colourful. I want that blue to pop. I want the orange to pop. Not as much as it was doing, and that's why I've adjusted the channel. And yeah, before and after. So this is how I done it first time. Is that really how I done it first time? Okay. And this is where we are this time. Again, I think I prefer my new edit. I think it's a cleaner shot. First time round, I hadn't brought in that tool to control the highlights down here. And I think that is a shame, because I definitely, looking at it now, my eye goes here. It doesn't go up here, it goes down here. So in this version, we've controlled that by using that linear gradient. So now our eyes go up here instead. Again, these stars I do think are a little bit of a problem. When I looked at this just now, what I thought these were flares in the lens, or I don't really know if good camera lenses get it, but if you've ever taken a photo with an iPhone, or most smartphones, to be honest, and there's a street light in it, you'll often get these little sort of mirrored points of light, and it's because of the light reflecting in the cheap lens elements on your phone. This isn't that, but it looks like it. It just sort of looks like those little dots aren't supposed to be there. So I think if I were doing this for a proper reason, I would either want these to be noticeable as stars or not there at all. But what they are these just sort of smudges because of a long exposure. So I would definitely take this over into Photoshop, and I would remove those from this image in particular. I'm not going to do that because, I can't be bothered, and you know what Photoshop is. I'm going to move on to something else. I'm actually going to move on to this photo. Now, I don't actually have the edited version in here right now, But this is a shot that I took on my Sony RX1R, which is one of my favorite little compact cameras, particularly for black and white photography. For whatever reason, it delivers stunning black and white images, but I always shoot my photos in RAW so that I've still got the color version to go from, and I can do a black and white conversion should I want to. What drew my eye to this scene, I love a figure kind of standing alone, lost in their own world. And in this case, this person is just there having a sandwich, but the shadow is really prominent. We've got this great contrast and this light coming in. And so I really like this as a scene. So I thought this would be a good one to have a look at for an edit. I like the fact that we have this stone and this information, but it's a bit distracting because you look at it and you kind of want to read it. You want to read that text, and the photo is not about the text; it's about the person and the shadow. But we've also got this bright highlight from the sun coming here. We've got this sign here, all of which is irrelevant. So the first thing that I want to do on this photo is do a heavy crop that's reducing it almost entirely down to some very basic elements of, let's straighten this up so it looks like this. I don't need his shoes. I don't need the whole person in. I'm going for something like this, and I think this is pretty much what I had on the original photo. Slightly risky cropping this much from this camera because it's only, I think, 24 megapixels. So we're still going to have plenty of detail, enough for certainly an Instagram post. You can see it's not super sharp now, but certainly, it's good enough for most things. This was hang on, how big was this photo? It was 6,000 by 4,000. I've now reduced it to 2507 by 1672. Take an f2. 35mm, of course, because it's a fixed lens camera with my ISO at 125. So we've got a good clean starting point, but I really like reducing this image to what I think here is the important part. This person, the sandwich, and this amazing shadow. So that's what we're going to work with. First thing, when I am converting a black and white photo, converting a photo into black and white, that is, I love using Adobe's own black and white profiles. They are my favorite. I don't use other presets. I only ever use black and white 03, sometimes black and white 04. In this case, black and white 3, I think it looks a bit nicer, but it's a starting point. Like using any kind of profile or preset, it should be a jumping off point. It is not about doing one click and considering it done. So for me, there's a few things that I want to do, and step one is, you know what, I was going to be dropping the shadows. It's not going to be dropping the shadows. I am just going to up the contrast that little bit more to try and give that, certainly around here where this person's shadow is, give it a bit more punch, give it a bit more reason to exist. It's the problem with going before and after. If you're doing a black and white photo, it's very difficult to judge what you've done because you're going all the way back to when it was a color photo. So I suppose we could just turn off the light tool. Yeah, and I think that's okay. I'm going to bring in straight away, not a radial gradient rather. I'm going to bring in a linear gradient, and it's going to be over here because we've got bright text, bright stone here on this side of the image, and I don't want that. So definitely going to bring those highlights down and actually just bring the exposure down so that it's almost getting none of a light at all. We can still see what's there. It's not like I'm letting it fall completely to black and it's going to look really weird. It's very much there. It's just making it more subtle within the frame, and that's kind of that's going to really help draw our eye towards this person. I'm also going to bring in another now, coming right down from the top corner, and I'm going to try and just bring the highlights down and increase the contrast a little bit. Maybe increase the whites. Maybe bring the shadows down. Something like this. If I just turn that one off and on. But what I might try and do if I just expand this, I'm going to try and remove from that mask the person. So now, whatever I do to that mask isn't going to be applying to him. It's going to look ridiculous if I go too far because it's just doing a rough cutout. So you've got that odd halo, looks bizarre, but it's going to just allow me enough to just slightly pull down the bits that we want, which is including the shadow. I could even try and pull down the black point just a little bit and maybe just, yeah, up that contrast. What about a little pop of clarity? Yeah, that really helps. I'm really trying to just carve out that shadow on the wall even more. So I'm going to play around with these sliders, just trying to get that to be really, really there. And then we can work separately on the figure. And I think I'm going to do that. I mean, I could create a mask, but I think first of all, I'm going to have a look in the black and white mixer. This is again just bringing us back to our color channels basically, but now they are black and white. Because I think, yeah, if we bring up the oranges, you can see that obviously most of this person's skin tone is in orange. So if I bring that up, it's really going to lighten them or bring them completely into shadow. It is affecting the background a little bit too, so it's going to have to be a subtle approach here. Just enough to bring that up. The yellows, I imagine, are going to be more on the background, so I could always bring the yellows down and the oranges up a bit more. Something like that. I don't imagine there's much of anything else. There's a little bit of blue in his jeans, and actually, if it's up bright, it looks like he's been cut out. So I'm going to bring that down quite a way. Yeah, dittos with the purples and magentas, but otherwise I think that's kind of it. So you can see that just by using that color channel, it's helped bring out this person's skin tone a bit. But I am also then going to bring in another mask, entire person, and we could just bring up slightly. You know what? I don't want to bring the shadows up. A little bit of exposure. Tiny bit off the highlights because the top of their head is now basically the same tone as the stone behind. So I feel like I'm losing that separation just a little bit. Yeah, a little pop. And I could maybe... Now, clarity on a person often doesn't look good, but I think here, because this person's, they've got some stubble going on, and so the hair there. So I kind of think that little pop of clarity actually kind of helps emphasize some of that. Ditto. I've just gone +2 with the dehaze. I think if we turn that tool off and on, that is very subtle, but I do think it's helped slightly. So that's kind of where we've got to with this. If we turn our masks off and on, you can really see how by using selective editing, we have drawn the attention again to the figure by trying to make them the brightest part of the scene. Without those masks, our eye goes to the left of the scene, to the stone with the engraving, and to the top of the scene with that highlight of light coming in. We've kind of toned down both of those things, lightened up our subject, and now I think they stand out against that background in a much better way. So yeah, I'm pleased with that. I actually think that looks pretty good. I think if I was going to do any more, I'd probably bring in another mask on their face, something like this, just trying to bring in, and maybe on their hand, something like this. I'm probably shaking the camera a little bit as I'm doing this, but it's fine. And just give it an extra little pop of whites. But crucially, I'm not applying it to the top of the head. It's more to the front of the face. And I'm hoping that it makes sense doing it here where the light is coming in across their face rather than on the front where it's in shadow. I could maybe add a little bit more to the nose, which also is catching that light. And again, if I wanted, I could sort of try and emphasize the person with a bit of clarity. and maybe even some sharpness, because we did lose some sharpness by cropping in so much. I don't want to add it to the whole scene because I don't want to add detail and clarity and things to the stonework, because that's only going to draw our eye to the stonework. Whereas I want very much figure to be the central part of the scene. So I think that's it. I can't really remember how close that was to my original. I think it's fairly similar, but yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how that looks. Now, I have chosen a whole bunch of photos to go through. I'm not necessarily going to get to them all. Some of them I may not get through to them at all. This one I kind of threw in because in the past year, I bought, in November last year, I bought my Leica Q3 43, and I love that camera so much, and one of the reasons is because I love shooting on it straight out of camera. So when I'm out and about, I'm not thinking about the edit, I'm just thinking about capturing the moment. And this photo, all I've done is slightly adjust the crop. Everything else, the colors, the tones, the exposure, everything straight out of camera. And I adore how this photo looks. I absolutely love it. So I brought this in as an example of this is kind of what I'm increasingly trying to strive for. It's not that I don't like the editing side, but I want to try and, before I said it's sort of a 70-30 split, I want to try and get it closer to 90-10. Just sort of refining, the photo that I've already got. And I think this is a good example of that. Sometimes I might do a little bit more. I might just sort of deepen the shadows a bit, but for the most part, that is how I'm trying to shoot with some of these. This is another example. I've done nothing to this, but I actually think I could do more to this. I never included this, but I do quite like it. I like the prominence of this Deliciosa sign. We have got the W Hotel in the background. I actually really like how it kind of looks like almost like a shark's fin as part of this restaurant, where actually it's the hotel in the far background. If I wanted to do anything to this, first of all, of course, we need to straighten it up. Something like this. I think I would probably bring the shadows down just to just slightly take away from looking within the restaurant, to instead of the focus being on the beach, being on this. I would up the whites to kind of account for that. So straight away we've got, I think, quite an interesting looking scene. It's very subtle in its colors, and I actually really like that. But I think on this one, again, it's the same color profile. It's one of Leica's built-in looks, and so I take the photo with that look applied, and then that's my image. And this is the same, but I actually think that it could do with a little bit more vibrance. Maybe more so coming from the blues. So I might actually just up the saturation of the blue, plus 20, maybe even bring it down to -5 in the hue. If we turn that off and on, you know what, honestly, I don't even think I can tell the difference. But overall, I like it. The other thing I might do, actually, you know what, if I go back to my crop tool, I need to auto geometry, because, yeah, that wasn't quite straight. Is that horizon now straight? No, I don't think it is. All right, let's do it the manual way. I'm going to draw in one line for the horizon, and then I'm going to draw in another for this post of the restaurant. Does that now look weird to you? Does that look weird? Is that right? Let's put in another one here. That's more like it. Okay. Sometimes the geometry tool can do a good job. Sometimes it can be weird. Sometimes you absolutely need to take manual control and say, no. This bit needs to be horizontal, this bit needs to be vertical, and this bit needs to be vertical. And so because of that, that's exactly what we've done. We basically sort of dragged it down in place. So we've got a straight horizon, and our La Deliciosa is also upright in exactly the places where it should be. Other things I want to do. we've got a couple of distracting elements over here. We've got the bird in the sky. Now, if this was a bird, you could see the wings and it was pin sharp, it would look great. But instead, we've just got, you know, a bit of wing. Yeah, you can tell that it's a bird, but it just really doesn't look like it should be there. I think this is a person. I know these are two people hugging, but because it's two people hugging, it just looks like a lump. I like this figure because you can clearly see that this is somebody standing next to the waves. And originally, I liked this little pile of balanced rocks, but because of the crop now, well, actually even before, it needs to be here. What it is far too close to the edge of the frame, so it kind of makes for a messy composition. My goal with composition, and I think this applies to all parts of photography, is that good composition needs to show intention. And so you either need an element that is in the scene or out of it. You need to make that decision of what do you want in your scene. And if I wanted this pile of rocks in the scene, I needed to have shifted my position so that it was over here, so it looked like it was supposed to be there. Whereas instead, it's borderline on the edge of the frame. Well, not even borderline. It is now on the edge. If we go in, you know, this bit's kind of cut off. So it doesn't work in the scene for me anymore. So I really would want to get rid of these. Maybe just the heal tool will do a good enough job. Let's just have a quick look. I mean, yeah, that's basically fine. If you kind of paint it in, drag it around, let's zoom in slightly, and we can do the same here with this couple. Paint it in, don't let any bit go. I mean, why? Why would you decide that that's where it needs to be? What is wrong with you, Lightroom? It's clearly somewhere like this. Turn that off. Is that... Okay, I mean, like, I think if I was doing this properly, I would take this over into Photoshop. I would also see whether generative fill can do a better job, because often it can. I didn't do a very good job of that. And for small things like this, I don't mind using generative fill. I would never use any generative tools to put something there that wasn't. But if I'm just trying to, you know, create a bit of empty sky over the top of something, I don't mind. But again, it's one of those things that's absolutely up to you to decide where you want to draw your own lines in terms of using tools like that. No, I don't love anything generative, but it's no different to what I'm doing here. I'm just having the computer decide on, saying, I don't want this here. Can you please put something else in its place? So I don't really know. I don't think it matters what it's doing in that sense. The end result is the same. So there we go. I think without those items, we've reduced those distractions down completely. So we've now got this nice bit of beach, this person there. I'm actually going to bring in our crop to this point to make this person bigger in the frame. I actually really like that. I also kind of like that we've got this sort of natural flow from the high point of the hotel, flows down through the sign and then onto the person on the beach. Now, you could argue that what that actually means is that my scene is completely unbalanced because we've got so much going on in the right, much less going on in the left. But I think, for me, that's the joy of photography, that one person's bad composition is another person's good one. I'm not saying this is good composition. It just kind of looked quite nice to my eye. But I think this is an example of what I would do to a photo when it's not about necessarily the exposure and the color tone, because for the most part, I've tried to keep it exactly as it was. I haven't wanted to push this too far because I love the tones from that Leica straight out of camera. So this has been about that last 10% that I mentioned, refining what's already there, refining the composition by bringing things in, by also removing some of those distracting elements, and simplifying the scene to the things that are most important. So yeah, I like that. I think that's pretty good. Let's move on to another one. Let's do, oh, you know what? Let's do this sunset scene. This one, I think I took on the Fuji GFX, the RF 100, whatever it's called there, medium format compact. Yes, the GFX 100 RF. I never did a video on this camera, largely because I didn't really take any shots that I especially liked. This one is fine, but it's one of about 3 that I thought were okay. And for whatever reason, I didn't even shoot any video around it. But, you know, it's a pretty nice scene, lovely sunset. And with a big medium format sensor, I was hoping that we would have plenty of plenty of dynamic range to pull back that light and create a bit more of a pleasing scene. Here then is the edit that I did first time round. I've tried to be relatively subtle with what I'm doing, shooting right into the sun, so you're never going to be able to pull that back completely. You know, it is just going to be a big orb, but I think it's looking okay. One thing I did do, which I'm going to maintain, is a narrow crop. Now, I do adore an X-pan, as it were, very wide, very narrow crop. I'm going to turn this candle off, or as much as you can turn a candle off anyway. Reason being, is it's disgusting. Yeah, don't like that one at all. Pintail's normally okay. This one's sandalwood and cardamom. That's a bit better. This one, Woodland Walk, is it's very perfumey. I do love scented candles. I actually often make my own. I've got some incense, some rosemary incense. I know this is not part of the video, but this video is always going to be basically just come and hang out with me for a while I edit some photos. So that is exactly now what I'm doing. So I'm just going to swap over to the main view while I light up this incense. We've been going for an hour so far, and we've done 4 photos out of the 50 or so that I had earmarked to do. So I'm a little bit behind schedule, but yeah, I thought maybe 2 hours. The last one I did, I think, was about 2.5 hours, and honestly, I expected nobody to watch any of it. But you know what? This was a terrible idea, because now I'm going to be coughing the whole way through. All right, it's going to settle down. Is it going to settle down? Anyway, quite a few people ended up watching it, and the ones that did really enjoyed the basically the idea of it almost being like a live stream. That it's not about here's your 5 quick tips for better Lightroom photos. It's instead just me talking and editing and stuff. So it's exactly what I thought I would do here. So let's go back to this, just checking that I've moved my OBS scene, because that is how I'm recording this. Anyway, let's start off then with our crop. I can't go full X-pan, which is roughly 1:2.7, because as you can see, we can have either the people here, or the lighthouse, but not both. So actually, I think maybe just something like, will 2:1 fit? Yes, 2:1 fits actually quite nicely. We're going to have to do some geometry here as well, because we've got our horizon. We've then got the lighthouse. So that doesn't look right, does it? No, undo that. Grab this. No, wrong way. Does that look right? Something like that. I think that's basically fine. Cool. All right. So there we go. We've already got then our we've got our geometry and our crop in place. So I like it a lot. I love a wide scene, and we've got plenty of things going on throughout this scene, but having all that empty space at the top in the empty sky or down in the dark parts of the foreground was sort of irrelevant. So in terms of our exposure, obviously highlights are going to be important in this edit because most of this scene is one big highlight from the sun or big shadows. So if I just grab the exposure and bring it down, it's going to be making everything else very, very dark. So straight away, I mean, I am going to need to bring the exposure down a bit, but I'm going to see what our highlights will do first of all by bringing that down quite a way. And I think that's okay. The problem is with something like this where you know you're going to have a bit that's completely blown out, that's completely overexposed. If you bring that highlight down, it's going to make that sun look a little bit odd, basically. You're going to get the slight effects of, you've got this sort of outer ring and it looks processed. Kind of looks like an iPhone photo. It looks like the sort of thing that, you shoot it in the HDR mode on your phone and this is kind of what it cobbles together. Just looks a little bit unrealistic. So I do want to allow that sun to peek into overblown highlights a little bit more than, actually I think a little bit more than I did on the first edit. Oh no, you know what? I brought that exposure down more and the highlights a little bit less. Maybe that's a good strategy. Maybe Past Me knew what he was doing, but that does not seem likely. The shadows, we can obviously, with a dynamic range of a camera like this, bring it up as much as we want. We could do this. We could bring our highlights down and then look at all that detail. What a beautiful photo. Oh, isn't this fantastic? And now we can add in our contrast. And now to make it really pro, we can bring our clarity up to plus 99. And there we go. We can just export that and put it straight on Flickr and everyone will think it's wonderful. Obviously not, because it's 2025 and we don't need to play with our photos in quite such an appalling way. So let's instead bring everything back and I can stop messing about for the sake of the video. I definitely want to bring the shadows up a bit, and I actually do want to bring the black point up quite a bit as well. But nothing like to the extent that I just did for comic effect. This is a bit more like it, to be honest. It's sort of taking the edge off what was there. I actually don't think I want to bring in up the blacks, but I am going to do the same thing that I did before in an earlier photo in kind of bringing up that black point. So instead of it falling to 100% black, instead sort of giving it that fade, so it's actually a very dark grey rather than necessarily black. Actually, maybe bring up the blacks even more here. One thing I will say, and if this isn't already terribly clear by what I've done here, or if you've seen my other videos, my edit style is piecemeal, let's say. I'll play around with the sliders, then I'll move on to something else, and I'll go back, I'll try it again. I often don't really start out knowing exactly what I want to do. If I grab a slider, I'll have an idea of what the whites are going to do to this photo. For reference, probably nothing good. Yeah. So, but what I will do is grab a slider and I'll sort of pulse it one way or the other. I'll have a look at how it's affecting the photo before deciding on what to do. In this case, dropping it a little bit works quite well. Again, with the shadows, I don't really know, what's going to work so much here. So I'll pulse it up and down and I'll have a little look. I'll zoom in and see, what it's kind of doing to those details and then decide where to leave it. And I think something like that is actually looking okay. Not quite the HDR effect that we had before, but, we're okay. So it's not like I set out specifically hoping for a certain look. I'll just sort of see what happens, see what I can get. In this instance, in the color mixer, there's a lot of yellows going on, and I can grab those and I can bring them down, but subtlety, I can tell, is key. Because as soon as I bring that down to minus 26, that yellow suddenly looks it's gone quite grey over here, and I don't like that at all. But I do like that it kind of just pulls it in a little bit. So I'm going to leave it at somewhere around minus 11. What about those hues? If I could bring those down into a richer, warmer yellow. Oh, I do like that. because in the middle, it's a little bit yellowy green, and I don't want that. So bringing it down instead, -20. If we just turn that off and on, I do like that. That's nice. Probably the same with the oranges then, but a little bit less so, because they will quickly go pink. Actually, no, they're not quickly going pink. I've got a bit more room to play. They go pink down here. So I can bring it to, yeah, maybe -15. Even slightly increase that saturation. Pull down the luminance just by a little bit. This is definitely going to look odd if I start pulling it too much. Look at that. Going weird. So subtlety. Yeah. And that's why I find just moving the slider up and down, that's when you can see when it hits right. And to my eye, there. That's enough. That's enough for me. Before and after, I think it's looking good. What about the blues in the sky? Honestly, not a lot of them. It's mostly probably going to be, well, mostly probably going to have the problem we had before, in that I can't decide, I can't tell what color is or is not in the sky, and nothing seems to really do much. Oh, this is just pulling everything. Yeah. Okay, let's just put this around here. If I just undo that, yeah, I'm just going to have to leave that sky kind of as it is in terms of the blues, and that's okay. Is there anything else I would want to do to this scene? I think there is. I think what I want to do is bring in a brush, bigger size, increase that flow. First of all, I'm just going to paint in over here, because I think in bringing down the highlights in the sky, it's ended up meaning that we've kind of reduced them in the water a bit too much, and I don't love that. I think they could look a little bit better. So I'm just going to, yeah, paint in on where the sun's hitting the water. And if we just up those whites, maybe even up the highlights a little bit too, a little bit less, because I think we're getting some odd artifacts there. Look at that. Yeah, I don't like it. So just a subtle approach on the highlights. Maybe even a bit of clarity. Will that give things a little bit of a pop, or is that going to make things look too crunchy? Too crunchy. Don't like it. Leave the clarity where it is. -1 is fine. So if I just turn that off and on, yeah, I think it's nice. It's just brought back a little, a nice little touch. I can bring the shadows down and the whites up. So it's a small touch, but it's enough, I think, just to bring things back where we want. I like this shot, actually. It's we've definitely got the big burning highlight in the middle of the sun, but I think it works. I'm going to turn this incense stick off, because it is just blowing clouds of smoke in my face, and I don't want that. What do we think of this? We could definitely, if we wanted to kind of go a little bit further. Personally, right now, I think this is enough, but we could add some tones into the shadows. We could go some warmer tones, as we did before, bringing those nice sort of yellowy orange tones, something like this, off and on. I think that's quite subtle, but I do like it, actually. I know I said I think it was done, but maybe it isn't done. What about in our mid-tones? Yeah, you can really add in a lot with the mid-tones with a sunset like this, because it's mostly mid-tones. Yeah, you do get that sort of filmic look. If you could cool it down, we could go the other way, add in magentas, give it that sort of a sunset look. Personally, I prefer leaning warm, but I'm going to reduce that saturation. Something around there. And then we've got our highlights. And then we can add in ridiculous things. We could even probably add in some of the blue in the sky in our highlights. Is that what that's doing? If we maybe brought it around here, if you really ramp up the saturation so you can see what it's doing and then pull it back. Honestly, I don't think we need that in the highlights at all. Really small amount. We turn our color grading off and on, off and on. Pay attention to the shadows on the lighthouse here. Before, quite blue, magenta tones in those shadows. We've kind of warmed that up, and actually it sort of makes it match the sky a little bit more. So I like that. And if we look at our straight out of camera raw file, and then this is what we've done, I think that's pretty cool. I think that's okay. Nice tones, nice oranges. What am I doing? What am I doing? Again, I think it's I prefer it to the first edit that I did, because I think this one I've gone too dark. Trying to lean into them being a silhouette a little bit too much, and I think what we've done this time is more subtle. Actually, it looks a bit too. It does look too HDR. So I'm going to bring those shadows back a bit. Just trying to lean into the silhouette like this one has, but it's a brighter image overall, so I think we get a nicer effect. Yeah, this doesn't look as much like a burning hot Photomatic style HDR from the early noughties. This looks, I think, a bit more subtle. A bit more subtle. So let's call that photo done. Let's have a look at some of the other ones that I've done. Oh, you know what? I really liked this. So this was one I took on the Hasselblad X2D2. It was one I did at the horse races, which was an interesting day, let's say. And I think this is a pretty cool shot. But this was the original. So you can see I've done a lot to bring that photo back to a usable point. And so I thought this one might be quite interesting to see how we got it to that point. I loved this photo. Took it on the day with a panning motion. So as you can see, I was at f27, and that gave me a shutter speed of a 45th of a second. But of course, doing that kind of pan, the horses go so fast that I'm panning incredibly quickly. So even with a 45th of a second shutter speed, you're getting this great sense of motion blur. And what I like is that none of the riders are themselves pin sharp, but they're all sharp enough that you get the suggestion of what you're seeing. You can tell you're seeing horses and riders, but they're not. It's a little bit more abstract, and you get this real sense of motion with them instead, and which is exactly what I was going for. So I'm really pleased this worked. So first of all, just to make things easier, obviously this photo is too dark. So straight away, I'm increasing the exposure quite a long way, increasing the shadows, and then bringing back those highlights. That's pretty much sorted out our exposure to the point where it's at a point where you can see what's going on, and is roughly akin to what we had in our first edit. I also really like, again, doing this wide, narrow crop using the Hasselblad X-Pan crop ratio, basically, of the 1:2.7. And I liked that on this scene because it really fits with all of the horses that we have there. They're very much in this. They're fitting that shape of wide and narrow because the horses are spread out, but they're horses. They're not that tall. So for me, this crop worked absolutely perfectly with what I wanted to achieve, and I think really it draws the eye to them in a really nice way. And I'm just going to nudge the crop around so that they're roughly central. We've got this rider's arse roughly on this third of the frame, this arse roughly on the right third of the frame. So overall, I think that's okay. I might actually need to nudge it down a little bit because we've got a lot of headroom up here, less so down here. So let's just nudge right to the point where this bottom corner is about to touch the railing, which I don't want. And actually, I'm going to bring it in a tiny bit here and a tiny bit here. We've got a lot of room to play with in this photo crop-wise because it is taken on a medium format camera. The original ratio was 10,000, over 10,000. It's it's a 100 megapixel camera, so we've got a lot of room to mess around. Now, tone-wise, I don't really think I did a lot to this. It's pretty much where I'd want it to be. The blues are broadly the same. The green looks a little bit less vibrant, which is good because I kind of think it's a bit too distracting. But actually what I'm going to do this time is start with a preset. Have a look through some of my presets. I do have a lot. My favorites are Visco's one, their mobile preset range. Now, I'm asked, I think one of the most frequent questions in the history of my channel is, where do I get my Visco presets from? The sad answer is that I bought them when Visco used to sell them as a pack for Lightroom editing, probably over a decade ago now. And when they released that, I bought it. I think it was about £150. It was quite a lot of money. And obviously I've kept them. I've installed them on all versions of Lightroom since. But they stopped selling them, I think, like 6 months after they launched them. Don't know why. I have asked them, they didn't tell me, other than it wasn't a direction we wanted to go. So fair enough. But yeah, I love them. I think they look amazing, but it does mean that if you want to try and replicate those tones, I can't tell you where to go to get them. Certainly not in a let's say legal way. I'm sure there are forums, Reddit threads or something where people have uploaded them, but I won't do that with mine. I paid for them. They are a professional company. They deserve to be reimbursed for the products that they have, and if they choose not to sell them, then fair enough. Anyway, some of my favorites, one of my favorites in particular is A6 RAW, and this is just the half means half of the effect is being applied. And actually, when I look at what this is doing to the greens, I think this is what I used on the original edit, because it's really kind of taking some of the vibrance out, but letting those blues in the helmets continue to pop. So I am going to apply this one again, but even though this is only half the amount, you can grab this slider and adjust it down even more. Now in this case, I think I want half of the half. I want a quarter of the amount. So this is it without anything, and this is at 100, or that's the whole. If I wanted the one above A6 maximum, that's what it looks like. It looks very crunchy, very contrasty, and I don't like that. So I'm going to bring it down to 50%-ish, and I do, yeah, I like that a lot more. The one problem I do have with this that distracts me the most is that because I took the photo looking a little bit up the track rather than square on, it means that the slope of the tent opposite is kind of sloping away from the camera, and the grass of the track is also kind of sloping upwards. So I don't think it's going to be possible to correct those without skewing what the horses look like, because I think it's too extreme an angle. So if I did that, and then let's say this, you know what? I take it back. Or do I? Let's have a look. Before and after. Okay, well, that's not really doing a lot. That doesn't tell us much. Okay, geometry. Actually just makes that horse look a little bit closer, but it isn't changing its proportions in a way that I think is a problem for the image. I think that's okay. And the problem I'm having now is that there's a now slightly bit of a bowing of the roof of the tent. So we can change that by going down to, I believe, our optics. And if I enable lens correction, straight away it's recognized the lens, and it has adjusted slightly that bowing. I don't think it's adjusted it quite enough. I've just closed the tool. So which way do I need to go to adjust distortion? So yeah, now we can see if I bring that up a bit more, and now we can see that that center line is the same way almost the whole way along, except for at the left. So what I'm going to do is leave that there, then grab this and slightly adjust. And this, I think now, has meant we've got a perfect line all the way along the top and all the way along the grass, which is exactly what I want. So we're making some progress. That's good. I like that. So now let's move on to important matters of color. I don't want to adjust the white balance. I actually think this looks great as it is. It's not cool, but it's also not too warm. This was taken, midsummer. So I do like it to have a bit of warmth, but it was a really natural tone before. I can't remember what it was, but I'm going to leave it at 5518. I think that looks nice. Particularly with the preset that we used. I do like how that looks. So let's start playing with our color mixer, because I do think there's going to be some work in bringing out some of the tones on the horses. Let's start with yellow, and let's see what yellow does. Mostly, it's got to be said, it's in the grass. So I'm actually going to bring the luminance down. I may even bring the hue down a little bit. Not all the way. The grass wasn't yellow. It was lush green. But I just think taking away some of that, the sort of deep bottle green that I found a little bit distracting, and instead making it slightly more subtle in its tone works quite well. In the oranges, this is where I think we're going to do the work. What I want to do, start bringing out some of these tones. And indeed, yeah, look at that on the flanks and the rump of this horse, probably the one in the front as well. Yeah, we're really bringing out some good detail there. So I'm going to go plus 22. I'm going to increase the saturation, because I love also the vibrancy in this image. There's a lot of different colors going on, and just slightly adjusting, because the preset did kind of take away some of the orange of the horse. So I think that's looking really good. The blues, everything else basically looks fine. Really nice, rich blue tones in this scene. So there's nothing else there I want to do. But I do want to bring in our brush tool, and I am going to do a few things. Bit of whites and quite a bit of clarity. And what I want to do is paint onto the horse, because I think that with a bit of clarity, it's going to help bring out some of those. Obviously, it's blurred, but you can definitely see here the the muscles of the horse, though, that sort of definition. I think that having some clarity on the horses is really going to help a lot of this image pop. So let's paint this in. Quick question: is that doing anything? Yeah, it is. Turn that off and on. Is it exactly what I wanted to happen? To the extent that I'm going to go bigger on the clarity. What about a bit of dehaze? Just a little bit, tiny bit. And again, I think a little bit more of those whites. Yeah, look at that. Look at how it's bringing out that detail. Love it. It's a strong look. I've gone quite hard with this, but I think it's worthwhile. On some of it, but I don't want it everywhere. I don't want that much clarity in the whole scene. It has to be very much painted in based on what I want to achieve. And it may be that on a different edit, I would go around and I would put, a lot of clarity in for the horses, and then I would maybe put like a different brush with a smaller amount in for some of the riders, because you can build up the effect. You can use different brushes, different selective edits for all different parts of the scene. based on what you want to achieve. Smaller brush so I can go down and do this bit of a leg. Yeah, really like how this looks. A little bit on this person's head, on their arm, helping bring out some of those details. Yes. Splendid. So it's mostly just on the bits of horse, a little bit on the riders, but I don't want to add too much. So I think something like that. If we just turn off that tool, off and on, I've done a lot. It's really amped up. Way more clarity than I would otherwise normally use. But I do really like what it's doing. In particular, pay attention to this horse, the one right at the front. When I turn that off and on, it's really, I love how much pop it's bringing off into the scene. It's almost making it look quite 3D, I think, in the way that the horses are able to stand out from the blurred background. So I like that a lot. I think that's really, really cool. I don't think there's anything else that I need to do to any other part of a scene except for something that I clearly missed on my first edit, and it is dust spots on my sensor, which are both still here. There's probably loads more, but the problem is that if it's a pan, the dust spots are panning with the camera, so they don't get blurred out. There's probably lots of other little bits of debris or whatever on the roof of this roof of this tent that you don't see simply because it's blurry, but the dust spots will remain blurred, so they need to go. Thankfully, dot, there's one up here, dot. Are there any more? Difficult to say, isn't it? Hang on, let me zoom in here. Was that a dust spot? Are you a dust spot? Yes, you were. And obviously you need to readjust you to about that. Again, it's a quick job. There are others. If I were trying to get rid of a lot of dust spots, I would be taking this over into Photoshop, and I would be applying an adjustment layer to increase the contrast to allow me to see where all of those dust spots are. Then I can simply turn that layer off, and it makes it much easier to see, because some of these are very subtle. And again, when I've got this big old light shining in my face, I can't see. I think these are maybe those are some, maybe some aren't. Often it's easier to see when you move the image around. If it's just static, you can't see. I think there's a little one there, but I can't be bothered getting rid of that. You see my point? There's definitely one. Otherwise, this is kind of what I wanted to do with the image. So this one in particular has gone big from being very dark, very underexposed for whatever reason. And then this is what we have brought out. I love it. I think this is great. Yeah, I love the action, love the drama. I love that it's everything's blurred. None of the horses, none of the riders are sharp. So it's not quite abstract, it's not quite impressionist, but it's along those sorts of lines. What else? What else do we want to have a look at? I think I've been going, I don't know, an hour and a half or something now. Let's have a look at this one, because this one is, I took this on a recent video when I was in London. Took it on my Leica, and at the time I was talking about how I really wanted to use the natural shadow in the scene to emphasize this person, so it can fall on them, and it definitely did do that. But the original looks like this. So this is, for me, a very good example about how I will edit my images quite a lot, but it's always about working with what's there to try and make it look realistic. So in this example, that shadow is here. It is going right across here. That light is cutting through. It's just nowhere near as dark. You can see where it's falling here. The one at the bottom, less so, but we do have this shadow here, which gives a very natural cutoff point for where we can put in a different shadow. So it's not about completely, it's not about pretending that this light is falling in there and painting it in using adjustment brushes, and then it wouldn't look real because that isn't how the light was falling. It was falling like that. This light was coming through the scene. You can see here from the gap between the buildings, the sun was getting low. It's falling through and casting onto this person, causing their shadow to fall off this direction. Ditto, this bit of the monument is casting a long shadow here. So that light exists exactly as it is here. So the edit was about enhancing that and focusing where that light was falling to get what I wanted. And when I took the photo, that's exactly what I had in mind. I even said in the video, I'm expecting bringing in these shadows even more. So I'm going to show you how I did that, because it's actually very easy. And because, again, I took this on my Leica, there was very little I actually did to the photo in terms of the colors and everything else. I did just bring the shadows down, probably adjusted a little pop of whites as well. For now, that's all I'm going to do to the toning, but I'm then going to bring in our linear gradient across here, and I'm just trying to keep it in line with where that shadow already is. And we're going to bring our shadows right down, which actually has done very little. I'm going to bring the highlights. Where did I put that before? Because I don't want it falling on that bit. So what I actually might do, let's bring it up here. And let's bring our exposure down quite a lot. I'm going to subtract from that by selecting an object. And again, keep on just selecting all of this. That isn't working, is it? Let's have a look at how I did it on the original. I brought this in here. I see. You know what? It's going to end up taking a while. And I don't think you really want to see me go through doing all of that. But if we have a look, you can see this is kind of where we started, which is basically where we are now. All of this, all of the drama in this scene has come from using these selective edits. This one, if we expand this out, I can probably turn this off. This is darkening in this bit of building in the right hand side because it's quite distracting. So that's darkening this. Mask 2, which is just down at the bottom. This is then the one which is darkening down this. It's, again, as I said, it's falling very much in line with this shadow here. So when it actually comes in, it looks natural. It looks like it's where it's supposed to be falling. And then finally, we've got this big one up here, which I've brought in at I see what I've done. It's a stronger angle. So it's very much falling in line with this. Honestly, I think if I were going to be doing anything, it would be subtracting using a bit of brush. And I'm going to actually try and just subtract a little bit more from this highlight coming in, because that's kind of the point of this image, isn't it? That we see that bright light coming in, and as a result, that's what we then get. We get that light coming in from the side. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should. Actually, maybe not. No, it's definitely, yeah, it's distracting, and I think I made the right call. So I'm going to leave this exactly as it is. I'm not going to redo the whole edit, but you can see exactly what I was going for here, and the power of focusing your shadows based on where they already are. It was a shadowy scene, and what we've done is simply emphasized, arguably very strongly, but we have emphasized the shadows that are already there. Switching over to myself, a couple of reasons. One, so I can look at how long I've been recording. Currently 1 hour and 34 minutes. Will all of this see the light of day? Well, who knows? I want to drink, and I thought I'd just chat a little bit. It's been an interesting year photography-wise, and I've talked about this on some other videos and some other things as well, in that it has been a very busy year work-wise for me. My job as a journalist for the tech publication CNET. Lots of things going on. It's been kind of relentless in terms of going from one thing to another, never really having any downtime. Whereas in previous years, it's been peaks and troughs, and then in the troughs, I like to get out with my camera, do my own thing. Whereas this year, a lot of the videos that you've seen have been me basically taking my camera with me while I've been doing other work projects. So when I was out in Sweden earlier in the year, and I was photographing a big project for a big major article that I was doing. I was traveling around Sweden for that, and I tried to do a video that was sort of behind the scenes on me taking photos while I was away. Then I was out in Barcelona doing the same thing, and so a lot of the photo shoots that I've been doing have just been me trying to fit in creating YouTube videos while doing other things, which is fine, particularly when I'm going to interesting places like the Arctic Circle and Barcelona. Barcelona I will be going to again in beginning of March, because I go every year for work. But it's also meant that my style of photography has increasingly become, I was going to say snapshots. I think that's maybe unfair to my work. But it's been more, how can I take photos while I'm doing other things? How can I take photos while I'm out and about? While I've got my hands full with work things, or while I'm literally traveling from point A to point B, how can I make that hour's gap work for me, for my personal photography? And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because it's given me a few, having some challenges like that can really help focus the photography that I'm doing. But it's also why I've gotten increasingly into street photography, often because I'm literally traveling around the streets trying to kind of get to destinations, but I keep my camera slung around my neck, so I'm shooting away while I'm doing other things, and then you're seeing those results. But I also think it's good to learn how to enjoy photography as a hobby while also having a life, because many of you watching this you will have busy careers. You may have families, you may have little kids, and so you're having to go and take the kids out, but you also still want to take photos. And it may be that the more traditional landscape photography style of going with a big backpack of gear, hiking for hours into the hills, and then spending ages setting your camera up on a tripod with filters and then waiting for the perfect light. If you've got a busy life and if you've got kids, you can't do that. You can't get out into the middle of nowhere and do that sort of photography, at least not very often. So sometimes I think it's really important to learn how to engage with your photography, how to be able to take photos that you're really happy with, but you're not spending an hour on one image. You're instead kind of shooting from the hip a little bit more. It's about capturing real moments, real lifestyle moments, whether it's your life or whether you're kind of documenting other people on the street. And so that's kind of why I've been doing more of that sort of thing. And it's also why I've been doing less macro, because sometimes getting out, yes, I live in Edinburgh, and Edinburgh has plenty of green spaces, but the sort of macro that I've normally done has meant going into forests and finding, really great, slightly more wild outdoor places. That means getting in a car, driving an hour north across the Forth River and going up into Fife or the Trossachs or somewhere like that, and doing some filming there. But that's a whole day. Sometimes it's multiple days. If I go out and I don't find what I want, so I don't get any photos, I'll then try again in a different location the following day. This year, impossible. Simply haven't had the time to do that level of work. So it's not that I'm complaining. It's more just explaining that I've tried to shift my style of photography to be a little bit more complementary to the rest of my life. And honestly, if you found that you don't take as many photos because you found work or family or other things, meaning that you're too busy, then I would encourage you to kind of think about your photography in the same way. How can you make it work for you? How can you make it fit in with what else you're doing? A big part of that for me has been simplifying my camera setup. That's why I bought my Leica, my Q3, because instead of thinking, okay, am I going to take my R5 and shall I take this zoom lens and this prime lens and this filter and this? It's just my Leica. I just go out with the one camera and that's it. And it means that I can just have that slung around my neck. I have that slung around my neck when I'm just going to the shops in case I happen to see something I like. If I'm just meeting up with my friends in the pub, I'll take the camera. It's 6 p.m. on the 31st of December. I'm going to some friends for a New Year's party in about an hour. If I finish this video, which I may not, who knows. My point being, my camera will be coming with me then, so I can snap away and get some nice shots with my friends. And I think for me, that's, as I say, that's the important thing is simply, finding a way to kind of make my photography work in amongst everything else. And that has been crucial to why I still today love taking photos every bit as much as when photography wasn't my job. Photography for me right now is still my profession, but it's also my hobby. It's my biggest passion. And I do feel very fortunate that it is both of those things. But for a lot of people, you can burn out very quickly if you only, if your hobby is your job. You start to not enjoy your hobby anymore. I do enjoy it still, but it's because I keep things varied. I'm not just doing work photography and I'm not just doing macro. I'm doing lots of different genres. I mix it up. It's why my channel is varied. It's also why nobody watches, but I remain as passionate about photography today as I did when I began. If not, I would say more so. Anyway, that was a long conversation about things that nobody asked, and yet for some reason I'm talking for ages about anyway. Let's move on to a different photo, because I think I'm kind of done with that one. Let's move on to... Oh, you know what? Let's move on to this one. This is one... Actually, this will be in an upcoming video. I went to Portugal recently. This was in Porto. I also went to Lisbon. Absolutely amazing photography opportunities in those cities. If you want to go somewhere just for the photography, go to Portugal. It's incredible. I loved Porto. I would happily move to Porto. I'm not going to, because I live in Edinburgh. Why would I move? But this is one of the scenes that I saw clearly at night, and I wanted to take this as a black and white image. The thing that really did it for me is we've got these people, they're smoking whatever they are. I think nuts. Are these cashews? Asadas? I don't know. Almonds, maybe. A nut. I don't know what it is specifically. I didn't have any. But because all this smoke is billowing up into this umbrella, it basically turns the smoke and the umbrella into a gigantic softbox for these lights, which then cascades down over them and really highlights them in this scene. We've got the subtlety of the building in the background as well, and obviously the ironwork of the bridge, the name of which I can no longer remember, but it's lovely. And yeah, for me, this was definitely going to be a black and white scene. So I'm going to start off by going to black and white 3, maybe black and white 4. Not a lot of difference. The only real difference is how much the highlight is popping on black and white 4. It's a little bit more contrasty. So I'm going to go with 3 simply because I want to add that in myself. I want to have the control. So if I start off by applying this profile, I'm going to have less control over pulling back some of those details. So let's go with 3 and then close that. Also, we're going to go our geometry. Auto has not really worked. So let's go guided and Let's bring in... Oh, has it done that already? No, it hasn't. Clear guides. Oh, it had. It had done some already. Actually, that was actually... That looked... I was going to say, that looked basically like I wanted it to. So, fine. Let's just leave that. Because, yeah, that has brought it in pretty much perfectly. I'm also going to bring the crop back. Drag it down this top corner because I don't want that one street light up there. It was distracting. This, then, is our scene. Perfect. So straight away, there's a few things that we can do. I actually, I want to pulse the shadows, but for me, the joy of this photo is it's very low key. We're seeing almost nothing except for the light coming down from this, and then this is subtle in the background. So I'm going to bring the shadows down a little bit just to that. Whites a little bit, something like that. But I think the rest I'm going to do with some with a brush tool. I'm going to again increase the whites a little bit and just sort of paint that in on some of the smoke around here. A little bit less so in the middle because the middle is going to get quite bright quite quickly. I'm also just going to add in a little touch around there. And if I just pulse that a bit more, yeah, somewhere around there I think looks good. The people's faces, it's recognizing person 2. Let's go view all. Person 2, person 3. Let's do person 2, create. And again, those whites, I want them to stand out a bit more. That's all we need. Next one, person 3, create. Whites. There we go. So they're very visible in the scene. But little else is, because everything else already falls into shadow. I actually, if we bring it up, don't like it. I don't want to bring it down either. So I'm just going to leave everything else as it is. We just got that pop of white. I don't think this is a scene that needs a lot, if I'm quite honest. I like, sometimes with black and white, up in the clarity can really give things a nice pop. And I do think it works here as well. So I'm going to go to +20. Just turn that off and on. Yeah. Oh yeah. Nice pop. Love it. Love that a lot. The only thing else I think I would do here, well, there's a couple of things. This person over here, slightly distracting. Their face and their body is obviously very dark. Their shoes stand out a bit too much. I find that distracting. So I think I might want to I'm not going to remove them from the scene. I am just going to bring in the brush tool. And, it's auto brush. We don't need that. Let's actually do something different. Let's go radial gradient. I'm literally just going to bring that in over the top of those shoes. Highlights down. Whites down. So now the shoes are the same brightness as the person's face, which is all I want from that. I'm not trying to remove them. I'm not trying to remove other figures from the scene. I'm just trying to just get rid of that little bit. There's this thing on the floor as well, and that is distracting, so I might get rid of that. The bigger problem I have, and I might remove this, is this wire hanging down from the lights that's going across this person's face. That is a real shame, I think. So I'm going to try removing this in Lightroom and see whether Lightroom can do a good enough job of this. But specifically, I am going to use the one with generative AI. I'm going to zoom in a bit, and so that I can paint over it with precision, because I don't want to remove anything that shouldn't be removed. I specifically want it to know that it's this long cable that I am referring to. So it doesn't then try and remove anything else on this person's face. So I'm really trying to pay attention. But also, if you accidentally left any in, that's going to make it more difficult for it to understand what it is that I'm asking it to remove, you'll end up with odd artifacts, or it just won't be able to do a clean job. It might not do a clean job anyway. It's maybe the sort of thing that I have to spend a bit more time in Photoshop, either using the slightly more advanced Gen AI remove, or doing it the old-fashioned way, doing it manually, clone stamp, anything like that, because it is a shame that it is in our scene. I think that's fine. I'm not going to do that bottom bit because I think it's going to confuse it. So let's see what it does. Removing area using AI. Okay, well, I can see here it doesn't look great, but it's the face that's the problem. It's definitely noticeable, isn't it? Because we've lost a lot of the image noise that was there. Basically, it's removed a lot of a texture in so doing, but there are some variations. I mean, no, and also definitely not. Number one was certainly the best, and I actually think if I zoomed out, you wouldn't tell. I don't think you'd know that was there. That's where our line was. We move it away. It's done a perfectly good job. If I was in Photoshop and I'd done this on a new layer, what I would do to resolve this is maybe, hopefully it would have done a better job in the first place, because generally Photoshop is better. It would have kept some of the texture. Otherwise, I would add in some image noise to this strip to help balance the textures a little bit more. So yeah, I think it's fine. Fundamentally, the glasses are there, the hairline's there, the line of the face, all still there. Everything else is basically fine. It's clearly understood what was there and what needed to go. So I'm happy enough with that. And certainly I think that it has made a big difference in removing this very noticeable distraction over this person's face. And again, I'm happy with that, because that's just a wire that is hanging down, that was swinging in the wind. Yes, I could have maybe taken the photo a moment later when it wasn't in the way, or maybe I could have adjusted my angle slightly, but the angle needed to be here in order to have both the figures and then the building in the background. So honestly, I have no qualms in removing that as an element from the scene. Again, it's up to you to draw your own lines of where you're happy in terms of using remove or not. Definitely, I would if I were doing this, if this were my finished image, I would try and do a neater job in terms of maintaining or bringing back the texture in this strip that has been removed. Anyway, that is everything else that I want to do on this photo. There's nothing more that it needs. I love the light. I love the tones. It's perfect for what it is. It is not a perfect image, but it is one that I really, really, really enjoyed taking. I'm going to do one or two more. I'm not going to go nuts. Let's do a quick. I mean, this was another example that I kind of put in of how great I think the Leica is straight out of camera. This is the raw, the JPEG. I love it. It's beautiful. And I think if you work hard with whatever camera, I'm not saying it doesn't have to be a Leica that does this. Other cameras have great colors straight off the bat. Fujifilm, of course, has their like film recipes that you can create different looks, and they can be amazing. If you get a look that you love, you can just shoot away and use your images straight out of camera. For me, that is what I love doing with my Leica. The tones of the beach here, the tones of the water. This is in northeast Scotland, but it looks like a Caribbean scene. It was really cold actually, but so I didn't want to swim because I don't know, I like my skin to not be frozen into into a hard brick. Let's have a look at this. This was from the Hasselblad X2D2. Same as the one that I did with the horse race. This camera, for whatever reason, I think takes shots that convert really, really well to black and white. And that's exactly what I did here. It was a very easy edit. So let's show an easy edit. First of all, geometry, auto, because we've got very noticeable lines. The camera can do a great job here. Let's bring it down, bring it in so that we're getting rid of some of the distractions of this person. Is that enough? Yeah, bring it out a bit more, because what I was saying before about composition, something either should be in the frame or not in the frame. And in this case, this yellow sign needs to be one or the other. So maybe just bringing it out. It's a bit of a tight crop on this person. My original crop, yeah, you can see that I've got it in, but I don't like the fact that we have IQ, fire, and security. I don't like that we have this, but I also don't want to Photoshop them out. But I prefer having a slightly wider crop on this figure. So I don't know. I think this is arguably the neater shot. Profile embedded, but we don't want embedded. We want black and white 3. Bearing in mind, these black and white profiles, these are built into Lightroom. It's not like the Visco presets I was showing you before where you can't get them. B&W 3 and 4 are built into Lightroom. So if you use Lightroom, you will have them. Bring the highlights down and shadows up just a touch. But also I'm going to add in, again, a little bit of sort of fade, just so that it's less of a punchy black and white. Something a bit more like this. If we turn that off and on, it's subtle, but it helps. And for me, that is all I want to do. Pretty much all I did in the first one. I think I've left the highlights a little stronger this time. And I think that's good, because it gives a little bit more punch to the scene. But that is how simple a black and white conversion can be. Use those profiles, and that's all it needs to be. This shot was a bit different, because the original, first of all, we've gone with a different aspect ratio. So I have recropped as a vertical shot. And then what I have done in this image, what I will show you, is a bit more selective edits in terms of wanting to bring out certain things in this person's face. So I've done lots of different edits. If we extend this out and we turn that off and on, you can see, hopefully it is subtle, I've added in some extra, a bit of clarity pop here and a bit more texture, because it helps sort of bring out some of the natural textures of this person's face. I've done a mask specifically here to bring in some of the highlights on the hands. And then here I have brought in a radial mask everywhere except the person to help control some of the highlights coming in from the bright window. So the whole thing in total, if we turn off those selective edits, you can see again, it's about bringing the attention to the subject's face by making that the brighter highlight in the scene. Emphasized some of those textures, and certainly what we've done with our exposure elsewhere in the scene. Let's just turn that off. By controlling that and using our black and white profile, this time we went with black and white 4. It's given us a lovely, subtle black and white look that I'm really, really keen on. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with how that looks. And I think I did pretty much the same on this shot, which was, I believe, taken on the Sigma BF. Yes, it was the weird Sigma camera that's milled from a single piece of aluminium. It's lovely. I enjoyed using it. Wouldn't buy it. But again, for the edit for this, we've gone with... Actually, you know what? It says embedded black and white. Is this the one that came with the camera then in that case? Who knows? I think it probably was. But, you know, again, I will have done the same thing. It's about subtlety here, using the natural tones in the scenes. Black and white 3 is clearly adding on the the profile on top of the black and white that's already there. So yeah, it's rather than this being a stark, contrasty black and white look, I want it to be a bit more subtle, a bit more filmic, dare I say, because again, we've gone for this quite strong S-curve where we've brought up the black point. And so I do like how that looks as a result. Let's do a quick look on. I think this one's probably quite a good one. This was one of the ones I was mentioning about when I was out in Sweden. I was out doing a story around electric cars in winter and what Volvo is doing with some of their safety things. If you want to read the story, it's online. But this is a shot I was shooting from a moving car on an ice track on a frozen lake. The whole crop you can see here, because you can see me literally shooting from the car window, or the other ones I was hanging out of the boot, literally having to hold on because I didn't even have a harness. So I had to do a few things. And firstly, I wanted to do a crop, and I think I went with quite a narrow one for this one, make it a bit cinematic. Let's go 16:9, bring it in so that we're not seeing any of this car, but we are seeing plenty of our subject. Exposure needs to come up, and we really need to lean into those cold, wintry blue tones. So our temperature comes down, but now it looks a bit purpley, so we bring the tint down, and we keep on adjusting until what we've got is this really nice, cool blue tone going on. Like it. How about a little pop of whites? Looks good. Maybe upping those shadows to bring out some of the detail on the car, just a touch. And then I think the rest of it is going to be in selective edits. So the first thing I'm going to do is select, will it select the car if I select a subject? It will. Great. That's going to make things a lot easier. Say what you want about AI in automatic tools, but having something that can instantly mask an object like that. Back in the day, I'd spent ages with the pen tool in Photoshop, going round at a pixel level, drawing this pen, moving the curves in place, and now it's one click and it does it for you. It's not making creative decisions, it's just helping you get your results much quicker, and I honestly think it's amazing. So now we can adjust the car a little bit more easily. A little bit, maybe more of a saturation. It is a dark blue, so I don't want to look too much. However, clarity on a car always works. Maybe not all that much, but, you know, definitely plus 20. Just turn that off and on. Really bring out the details on those panels. It looks really, really nice. So I like that a lot. That looks pretty good. I'm going to create a new mask. I'm going to bring in a radial gradient here. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, up those whites. But next, we're going back to our effects. Am I going to up the clarity? No, I'm not. Why? Because it makes everything look crunchy. Instead, what I want to do is the opposite. I'm going to decrease it, and I'm going to really decrease the dehaze. And look how that's now. It's looking like it's emphasizing the snow that's kind of blowing up, because this track had been swept, so there wasn't a lot of snow on the track. But I wanted to look like the car is power sliding, which it is power sliding around the ice. I wanted to look like it's going through these sort of snowbanks. So by reducing the detail, it gives that effect of billowing snow, which is really what we want to get here. And I think I'm going to do the same with a linear gradient from the top as well. We're going to decrease, our dehaze and the clarity, up the whites a little bit as well. So we're doing a lot there. But as a result, you can see by just completely decreasing the visibility of our background, it's really allowing the car to stand out a bit more. And let's maybe just see what it looks like by bringing in one this side too. Exactly the same. Bring down our dehaze, bring down our clarity, so that the clear point in the scene becomes the car. If we turn off all of those, I think that's pretty much what I did on the first shot. I mean, I actually really already prefer my exposure and color in the second, but certainly if you look at our masking in the first image, that is exactly what I did. Bringing in all of that dehaze, reducing the clarity to really emphasize the car, draw the attention to the hero vehicle. I think it looks so much better already. It is a Volvo, and if you're doing this for a commercial client, you really want to make sure that logo is visible. So let's add in an extra bit of whites and a little bit more pop, a bit of texture to the Volvo logo. That looks pretty cool. We could even, if we want, a couple of radial filters, add another one for the lights, and we can go a little bit less dehaze, a little bit clarity this time, and again a little bit more of the whites. So now those LED headlights now have a little bit more ping, a little bit more ping, 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 ping. Stop making noises, Andy. And then we need to get rid of this this pole, which was just a marker for the course, which we don't need at all. So we can very easily do this. Okay, apparently we're using AI. Fantastic. And it's gone. And I don't think this image needs almost anything else doing to it. It's cool and blue, so it really leans heavily into the wintry theme. It was about -18 when I was shooting this. Yeah, I shot this on my Leica. We've got a lot of room to crop, because obviously you saw the original was a much bigger image. It had the side of the car that I was actually sitting in, but because it's a 60 megapixel image, it's given us a lot of scope to crop and still have plenty of detail in it. I shot this at a fairly slow shutter speed of 125th of a second in order to get some of the motion blur. So you can see here that the wheels that are going really fast, you've got some blur, whereas if you use like 1,000th of a second, everything would be it would look like the car is basically static on the ice. But by using that slow shutter speed and sort of panning the camera with the car, that's how you then get that sense of motion. The car is literally sliding sideways around this corner, and that's the result that we get. I definitely like my new version over the old one. I don't know why I went so morbid with the colors. Look at that. There's no color left. Increase that. What are you doing, man? Something like that. It's already better, but I like my original. Sorry, I like my new version rather. Anyway, there you go. Let's do. How long have I been going for? Let's try and do a couple of quick ones. Let's start with. This was my edit. This is from a video I did in Wales. Absolutely loved it. And this is the original. A couple of things that I need to do that I honestly, looking at this, don't think I did. One, that horizon isn't straight, is it? Oh, yeah, it is. It just doesn't look it. Fine. Straight away, I want a wider, narrow crop. I want this to look cinematic. I'm going to go 2:1. Particularly as well, the reason I love using wider crops is when it makes sense for the image. And in this case, everything that's important to this photo, from this roof of this hut, the bricks, well, it's not a lighthouse, this structure, the mountains, then we've got this slope of the grasses and these people here in the pathway. Everything is very much spread across the middle of this scene. In the top of the sky, well, first we've got blown out sky, but it's a lot of empty sky. And further down, we've got a lot of empty grasses that we simply don't need. I actually think we could go further. We could do Xpan 1:2.7. And I still think that is giving us this glorious image. Let's straighten our horizon a little bit there to about that. That is telling the whole story of everything involved. It needs to go a little higher. Let's nudge it up to about there. I think that works really, really well because it still contains everything that we want in this photo, from, as I say, all those different elements, the rocks and the sky and the people, but it spreads it out really nicely across the whole frame. I actually think what I'm going to do is bring this down. So we've just got it ends as this pathway kind of comes off to the side. That's a different crop than I did before. I think I went maybe 2x1. This time I'm going to go even narrower. Let's go back and let's have a look at some of our presets. Maybe A10, but we can give it a different look later. Maybe A6 does look good. I think maybe I use A6 on the first one. It's a little bit too contrasty though, I think, whereas A10 has a subtlety to it. Let's go with that. But I definitely want to warm it up slightly and add in a little bit of magenta because it's looking a little cool to my eye. I'm going to grab the color mixer, take that yellow, it's now upped it into the greens. By using that preset, I'm going to pull it down a little bit more into the oranges. The oranges too have been brought down. I don't really love that quite so much. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to bring the shadows down. I'm going to give our whites a little pop. But two things. I want linear gradient on the top, feathered, but weighted a bit more towards the right because we've got, let's close this down, the very strong highlight because the sun was coming in from the right, and so it's a much brighter highlight in the left. So I'm just going to bring the highlights down and bring that exposure down a little bit more than I would because I'm going to do one other thing afterwards. And I also want a linear gradient coming in from the bottom. Again, feathered, and bringing that exposure down to, again, really put the focus on the light being throughout the middle of our scene. Before and after, I think just those few tweaks has already made this look pretty cool. Cinematic, even. The thing I wanted to do is add in a big ol' radial gradient. And because what I want to do is emphasize that sun coming in from that side. It's going to have to be even more so. Something like this. And let's increase the temperature and a bit of that. Is that going to work? Let me just turn that one on and off individually. Yeah, I can see what it's doing. I think that's working enough. So let's turn that off. Before and after, before and after. I think that's enough. I think it looks good. Copy the settings. Thank you. And let's bring them over to this one, which that same structure, but this time zoomed in to about 200 mil to give the compression and framed it between these posts. This was our original shot. I really like it. This is what happens if I just paste those settings. It's not dissimilar, we've got to be honest. I actually think I like, I like that we've got these kind of these warm tones. Does sort of look, have we got a sort of a vignette going on? From, looks a little warmer around the edges. This corner is a different tone to here, as it is here on these edges. And I don't think it's because of the lens. Maybe, is it a sort of a vignette if I go to enable correction? I mean, there is, yeah, those lens corrections certainly are reducing quite a heavy natural lens vignette. That's fine. Maybe that's what it is. But anyway, I mean, yeah, I like that. I actually really like those warmer tones. We've got the warmer tones in the sky, whereas the sky on this one is bluer, which I don't think works as well with the ground. But this one, it's more brown tones across the board, which I know doesn't sound great, but I honestly do like that. The crop does need adjusting slightly to bring it in. I don't want to center the structure because it's not in the center of those three things, so I don't think that would work, but I think that's a bit more what I had here. Anyway, do I want to do one more quickly? Yes, and the one I'm going to do is this, because this is one that I showed in a video. I took it on my Leica, despite what I said about my Leica giving amazing tone straight out of camera. This one is very much my own look. This is one that was recently shortlisted for the British Photography Award. I was very pleased. And this is the straight out of camera original version. So we can see all of the drama, all of the mood was definitely there, but we've done quite a lot to bring out the final cinematic looking image. Number one, narrow, wide crop. Number two, geometry, because just straightening up this image doesn't do. Clear guides. Just straightening the image doesn't do enough because of the angle of we need the you know what we need, the lighthouse. So we've got two in, and that now should be straight. It's fine, it's straight enough. Did I use a preset for any of this? I can't remember. I may have put A10 in, I may have gone A6. Did I go A6? If I did, we've then done a lot of edits on top. So let's do some of those now. I'm going to drop the shadows quite a bit. I'm going to pull up our black point, so we get that filmic fade that I talked about. I'm going to reduce the contrast a little bit, then reduce the exposure. We're then going to bring in a linear gradient. This one here, thought I was getting hiccups. I think I'm okay. Bringing that down. Not too much, it starts to fall to black. Looks weird. I am getting hiccups. Fantastic. Hiccups when I'm trying to film. That's a pain. Well, let's keep on going. Let me hold my breath to try and get rid of them. And I will silently work on this image, and you will have to just watch what I'm doing as I'm doing it. That horizon, despite what I've just done, isn't straight. That's better. Excuse me a moment. Has that done it? Holding my breath for 30 seconds or whatever. I'm sort of trying to replicate some of the tones that I had in the original, because I do love how this looks. And yeah, quite a lot of it I think is coming from the color grading. If we turn that off and on, is this the original? Yeah, okay. Okay, fine. So not as much is coming from the color grading as I thought. But you can see on this one, by adding in that sort of the green tones in the midtones, it's really added to like the feel of a stormy sky. Definitely, we need another linear gradient coming in over the top, and that's darkening down. But as I was saying on one of the other edits, it's about emphasizing what's already there. In this case, there is this really dark, black, stormy sky. So I'm not trying to create stormy, dark clouds from nowhere. I'm simply emphasizing the ones that are already in the image. That for me is how doing anything like dodging and burning, any kind of selective edits works best, is when you work with what already is there. Maybe what I needed to do is kind of look at the white balance. If I cool that down a little bit more of a magenta, now we're kind of getting somewhere. This is looking pretty good, I think. The yellows we can push into the orange, slightly increase our saturation. I'm actually noticing that we've kind of lost some of the yellow in the lighthouse. So what I'm going to do, mask, auto mask is on. Bring that right down. Smaller size. A little bit bigger than that. Something about there. Let's paint this mask in, but maximum flow. So we can do this. I'm specifically painting in the orange. Just like that. Nope, don't do that. And so now we can go. I'm going to increase the temp just to help boost the orange tone of it, and then increase the saturation. What about a little bit of clarity? Just a little bit, yeah. And that's just going to really help. Again, that yellow is there, but because of the other toning we've done, it's kind of been lost. So I'm just trying to bring it back and allow that one pop of color to really jump out at us in this scene, which it very much does. And I think that looks really cool. I actually do like this. I prefer the original, although I do like how much more the lighthouse stands out. In this version, I think I needed to allow the lighthouse to be a bit brighter in the image, which it is in this version. But I think that's kind of, for me, the joy of why I would go back and forth to an image, why I would go back and do a new edit on an image that I already had, because you get to kind of rethink some of your decisions, and maybe it allows you to be critical over a shot that you've already got and think about how you would improve that in a new version. I mean, certainly if you look at the color on that lighthouse here, if it loads, come on, thank you. You can barely tell that that's like a yellow color at all. It's been so lost in the whole mix. So bringing it back here, albeit a little bit too bright, it does like a touch unnatural, but it's still, you can kind of see that color really is there, whereas it's almost lost in this shot. So yeah, I think something like that looks good. Honestly, I think this is probably going to bring me to an end of this. Oh, hello. There we go. You don't want to see OBS, do you? I'm at 2 hours, 22 minutes, and I finished my water, and it is now 6:45 p.m, and I need to go out in about 40 minutes. So I could really do with eating some food before drinking. This has been very clearly rough and ready. I've picked a bunch of images and I've done some basic edits on them. I just wanted it to be like a nice fun one for people to watch, maybe chill out to, have it on in the background. But I also do hope that you have kind of learned a little bit about how I would approach some of these images, the thinking behind some of the edits. It's not so much always about knowing the technical skills of how to do a certain thing, but also knowing why you would choose to do a certain thing, whether it's to focus a composition, or whether it's using the selective edits to draw attention to certain parts of the scene. What I will say that I maybe should have started out with, that like anything, these edits are personal to me. This is what I think looks good on my photos. It is not the way to do it. So with everything like this, you need to make up your own mind about what looks good for your own photos. Never let anyone tell you that you've edited something wrong. It is not wrong if it is what you like. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you've watched for this long, you know what? I did this on the last one. I'm going to give a code word. And if you've watched all 2 hours, 20, whatever this ends up being, comment goose. And the reason being that I've had a goose here, a little goose, so that I know if you've managed to get through all the way to the end. Also, it will confuse those people who haven't when we start seeing a load of goose in the comments. I say a load. I'll be surprised if there's more than a couple. But anyway, yeah, I hope this has been enjoyable to watch. It's actually, honestly, I really enjoy doing this because sometimes I will settle in for like an editing session that does take me a couple of hours and I don't record it and don't put it out as a video. So if you actually do like sitting and watching these long sessions like this, then let me know, because I'd happily just press go on OBS and record my screen while I'm editing, and then I can just put that out unedited like this is going to be. I plan on doing nothing to this file except uploading it directly to YouTube. But anyway, if it does bring me to certainly does bring me to an end, probably at least an hour and a half later than I should have done. Thank you for watching. For those of you who've watched regularly, which I imagine by this point is most of you if you've watched this far into the video, thank you for watching my videos. YouTube is not being very kind to me these days, and I don't want to moan about that. It is what it is. Largely, it's down to decisions that I have made and I knew would cause problems for me, and indeed are doing. But it's fine because I continue to enjoy this channel. I'm having a good time doing it, and I'm really looking forward to a lot of the plans that I've got for 2026. So I hope you have had a great year. I hope you're looking forward to a great new year. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. I need to stop the recording.